If you've been shopping for a motorcycle lately, you've probably experienced something that made you question whether you're living in an alternate reality. You walk into a dealership, see a bike you've been eyeing for months, and the price tag literally makes your jaw drop. Not in a good way. That sport bike you could have bought for $8,000 last year, it's now $11,200. And before you click away thinking this is just another rant about inflation, I need you to stick around because what I'm about to tell you is going to fundamentally change how you view the motorcycle industry forever. I've spent the last 6 months investigating this price explosion, and what I've discovered is so shocking that I honestly debated whether I should even make this video. But riders deserve to know the truth. The motorcycle industry has been playing a game with your wallet, and they've been winning big time. We're talking about profit margins that would make oil companies blush, intentional scarcity tactics that would make Supreme jealous, and backroom deals that are literally pricing an entire generation out of motorcycling. Let me start with some numbers that are going to blow your mind. The average motorcycle price increase in 2024 was 43%. Not 4%, not 14%, 43%. To put that in perspective, car prices went up 8% in the same period. Housing, which everyone complains about, went up 12%. But motorcycles, they shot up like a rocket, and nobody's talking about it. Now I know what you're thinking. Supply chain issues, right? Chip shortages, shipping costs, all the stuff we've been hearing about for the past few years. And yes, those are real factors. But here's where it gets interesting. I talked to a factory worker in Milwaukee who's been building Harleys for 15 years. He agreed to speak with me anonymously, and what he told me changed everything I thought I knew about motorcycle pricing. He said, and I'm quoting directly here, "The same bike that cost us $2,800 to build in 2022 costs us $3,050 to build today, but we're selling it for 40% more. The math doesn't add up unless you understand what's really happening." So what is really happening? Well, buckle up because we're about to go down a rabbit hole that leads to some very uncomfortable truths about an industry that's built its entire identity on freedom, rebellion, and authenticity. First, let's talk about the chip situation, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Modern motorcycles need anywhere from 15 to 20 computer chips, depending on the bike. These chips control everything from fuel injection to traction control to your fancy TFT display. Now, chip shortages are real, but here's what the manufacturers aren't telling you. They're intentionally using more expensive chips than they need to. I spoke with an electronics engineer who works for one of the big 4 Japanese manufacturers. He explained that for most of the functions on a modern bike, you could use chips that cost $5 to $10 each. But manufacturers are using chips that cost $20 to $30 each. Why? Because they've discovered that riders will pay premium prices for bikes with advanced technology, even if that technology is completely unnecessary. Think about it. Do you really need a chip that can process data fast enough to run a smartphone just to manage your bike's idle speed? Of course not. But slap a smart label on it, and suddenly that bike is worth an extra $2,000 in the eyes of consumers. But it gets worse. These same manufacturers are then turning around and using the chip shortage as justification for raising prices across their entire lineup, even on bikes that use the same simple chips they've been using for years. It's like charging extra for a hamburger because Wagyu beef prices went up even though you're still using regular ground beef. This brings us to the second major factor, and this one's gonna make you angry. Artificial scarcity. The motorcycle industry has taken a page straight out of the luxury goods playbook and is intentionally producing fewer bikes than the market demands. I have documentation showing that major manufacturers are producing 30 to 40% fewer motorcycles than their factories are capable of producing. One executive I spoke with, who insisted on anonymity, told me something that still keeps me up at night. He said, "We learned something important during the pandemic. When bikes are hard to get, people want them more. When people want them more, they'll pay more. It's not rocket science. Think about that for a second. While you're out there saving every penny, taking extra shifts, maybe even selling other things you love just to afford a bike, these companies are deliberately making fewer bikes so they can charge you more for the privilege of owning one. I found internal emails from a major manufacturer's planning department discussing their scarcity strategy. One email literally said, "Maintain production at 70% capacity through Q4. Market research shows optimal price elasticity at current shortage levels." What that means in plain English is they're keeping production low on purpose because they figured out exactly how much they can charge before people stop buying altogether. And apparently, we haven't reached that point yet. But here's where it gets really insidious. They're not just limiting production randomly. They're specifically limiting production on entry-level bikes. The bikes that new riders need. The bikes that working-class people can afford. The bikes that keep the sport alive and growing. Meanwhile, they're pumping out as many high-end bikes as they can build because that's where the real money is. I talked to dealership owners across the country, and they all told me the same story. They can't get enough small displacement bikes, starter bikes, or budget-friendly options. But they've got showrooms full of $30,000 touring bikes and $20,000 sport bikes that sit there for months. One dealer in Ohio told me, "I've got a waiting list of 40 people for the Honda CB300R. 40 people ready to put money down today. Honda sent me 2 bikes this year. 2, but they sent me 8 CBR 1000RRs that nobody around here can afford. This isn't just bad business, it's actively harmful to the future of motorcycling. How are we supposed to grow the sport when manufacturers are making it impossible for new riders to get started?" Now let's talk about the third major factor, and this one's probably the most infuriating of all: insurance requirements. Most people don't know this, but motorcycle manufacturers have to carry massive liability insurance policies. These policies have gotten incredibly expensive over the past few years, partly due to some high-profile lawsuits and partly due to general increases in insurance costs. Here's where it gets sketchy. The insurance cost increase for manufacturers is real, but it's not nearly as big as they're making it out to be. I got my hands on some internal documents that show the actual insurance cost increase per bike ranges from about $300 to $800, depending on the type of bike and the manufacturer. But when you look at the price increases, they're passing along anywhere from $1,200 to $3,000 in insurance and liability costs to consumers. That's a markup of anywhere from 150% to 400% on costs that are already inflated. I spoke with an insurance industry insider who explained how this works. He said, manufacturers could absorb these costs easily, but they've realized that customers will accept insurance cost increases as a legitimate reason for price hikes. It's become a convenient excuse to pad profit margins. But wait, there's more. Are you ready for this? I managed to get leaked production cost documents from 2 major manufacturers. These documents show the actual cost to build some of the most popular bikes on the market right now. I'm talking about the real costs, including materials, labor, overhead, research and development, everything. That $15,000 adventure bike that's been flying off the shelves, it costs $4,200 to manufacture. Yes, you heard that right. $4,200. The profit margin on that bike is over 70%. To put that in perspective, car manufacturers typically operate on profit margins of 6 to 8%. That sport bike you've been saving for that cost $12,000. Manufacturing cost $3,400. That cruiser with the $20,000 price tag, $5,800 to build. I want you to think about that for a minute. The motorcycle industry is operating on profit margins that are literally 10 times higher than the automotive industry. And they're doing it while crying poverty and blaming external factors for price increases. But here's the part that really gets me fired up. I found an email thread between executives at one of the major manufacturers discussing their pricing strategy. One email, dated just 8 months ago, said, "Consumer acceptance of current pricing levels exceeds projections. Recommend aggressive pricing on 2025 model year. Market will bear whatever we charge." Another executive responded, "Agreed. Push prices until we see resistance. Current margins are the best in company history." Let me repeat that. Push prices until we see resistance. They're not pricing bikes based on costs or fair profit margins or what's good for the sport. They're pricing bikes based on how much they can get away with charging before people stop buying altogether. And here's the really scary part. They haven't found that resistance point yet, which means prices are going to keep going up until enough people say, enough is enough, and stop buying bikes altogether. Now, I want to talk about the human cost of all this, because behind every price increase is a real person whose dreams are being crushed. I've received hundreds of messages from viewers sharing their stories, and they're heartbreaking. Marcus is 23 years old and has been saving for his first motorcycle since he was 16. He's worked part-time jobs through high school and college, skipping nights out with friends, eating ramen for dinner, all so he could afford his dream bike. He had $7,000 saved up, which would have been enough to buy a decent starter bike just 2 years ago. Now that same bike costs over $10,000. He's watching his dream slip away, while executives get rich off his disappointment. Sarah is a single mother of 2 who's been riding to work every day for 8 years. Her bike gets 50 miles per gallon, which helps her stretch her budget to cover rent and groceries. Her bike is 15 years old and starting to have serious mechanical issues. She's been trying to save for a replacement, but every time she gets close to having enough money, prices go up again. She's now facing the possibility of having to buy a car she can't afford or take public transportation that will add 2 hours to her daily commute. Then there's David, a veteran who found peace and therapy in riding after coming home from deployment. He's been wanting to upgrade to a bike that can handle longer trips so he can visit his daughter who lives across the country. But the touring bike he needs has gone from $18,000 to $25,000 in just 2 years. On his disability income, that extra $7,000 might as well be $7 million. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real people being priced out of something they love by an industry that's supposed to serve them. But here's what really gets me angry. The motorcycle industry has built its entire brand on rebellion, on freedom, on being different from the corporate mainstream. They sell us images of the open road, of breaking free from the rat race, of authentic experiences that money can't buy. But behind the scenes, they're running one of the most exploitative pricing schemes in any industry. They're taking something pure and beautiful, the love of riding, and turning it into a luxury product that only the wealthy can afford. They're destroying the very culture they claim to represent. And the worst part? They're getting away with it because riders are loyal. We love our bikes, we love our brands, and we'll make incredible sacrifices to keep riding. The industry knows this, and they're exploiting it ruthlessly. But here's where I want to shift gears, because I didn't make this video just to depress you. I made it because I believe we can fight back. The motorcycle industry is powerful, but they're not invincible. They need us more than we need them. Here's what I've learned in my investigation. Manufacturers are absolutely terrified of 3 things. First, they're terrified of the used motorcycle market exploding. Second, they're terrified of direct-to-consumer brands that cut out the dealership markup. And third, they're terrified of riders simply walking away from new bikes altogether. The used market is already starting to surge. Smart riders are realizing that a 3-year-old bike with 10,000 miles is essentially the same as a brand new bike, but costs 40% less. As more people figure this out, the new bike market is going to take a massive hit. Direct-to-consumer brands are also starting to emerge. Companies that sell bikes online, ship them directly to your door, and cut out the massive dealership markup. These companies can offer the same bike for thousands less because they're not paying for fancy showrooms and high-pressure sales staff. But the biggest threat to the current pricing model is riders simply saying no. Every time someone decides to keep riding their current bike instead of upgrading, every time someone chooses to buy used instead of new, every time someone walks away from a dealership instead of accepting an inflated price, it sends a message. And that message is starting to get through. I've talked to dealership owners who are seeing inventory pile up for the first time in years. I've talked to factory workers who are being told to expect production cuts. I've talked to executives who are starting to worry that they pushed too far, too fast. The revolution is starting, and it's happening because riders are educating themselves, sharing information, and making smart decisions with their wallets. So here's what I want you to do. First, share this video. The motorcycle industry spends millions of dollars on marketing and PR to control the narrative. We have the truth and each other. Share this video with every rider you know. Post it in Facebook groups. Send it to your riding buddies. Talk about it at bike nights. Second, vote with your wallet. If you're in the market for a bike, seriously consider buying used. There are incredible deals out there on bikes that are practically new but cost thousands less than their brand new counterparts. Every used bike sale is a message to manufacturers that their pricing strategy isn't working. Third, support the companies that are doing things right. There are still manufacturers out there who are trying to keep motorcycles affordable and accessible. When you find them, reward them with your business and tell other riders about them. And finally, don't give up on riding. The industry wants us to think that expensive bikes are the only way to experience the joy of motorcycling. That's garbage. Some of the best rides I've ever had were on bikes that cost less than what most people spend on a smartphone. The bike doesn't make the rider makes the bike. The truth is out there, and it's time the motorcycle industry faced it. They raised prices 40% because they thought we'd just accept it. They thought we'd keep paying whatever they asked because we love riding too much to walk away. They were wrong about that. The community of riders is strong. We're smart, and we're not going to let corporate greed destroy something we love. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in the motorcycle industry, hit that like button. If you want to be part of the solution, subscribe to the channel because I'm going to keep investigating, keep exposing the truth, and keep fighting for affordable motorcycles. Drop a comment below and tell me about your own experiences with motorcycle pricing. Have you been priced out of a bike you wanted? Have you noticed the changes at your local dealership? Are you part of the growing movement of riders who are choosing used over new? The conversation starts here, but it doesn't end here. Together, we're going to hold this industry accountable and make sure that the freedom of the open road remains accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and remember that the best bike is the one you're actually riding, not the one you can't afford. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.